Hello, everybody. Jean-Luc, thanks for these very nice words, and thanks for the invitation to be here. It's really a pleasure to be here and speak about mobility as a service, and also to listen to this ecosystem and a lot of new information, valuable information for me. One information that is still in my head is from the morning, that 43% of people in Europe don't know what will be their next car. This is really interesting. I know exactly what my next car will be because I'm changing it in 10 days. After 25 years of using fossil fuel car, my next car is this. This is my next car. It has come time that I make a radical switch for which I'm preparing for 5 years, to be honest. And a lot of other people switched. I live a little bit outside Ljubljana, so I will need to use those 10 services. Some of those we developed, some of those others developed, but I will need to use all those services to cover the mobility needs that I have. But it is time to make this switch, and I think more and more people will do it. Let me talk to you about this journey. So I would like to start first with the big picture. So we are talking about industrial revolution driven by data technology. And it's not about transportation. It is much bigger. It is affecting all the industries, essentially. So we are living in times of two different economies. At the bottom, if you can see, there are some champions of traditional economy. So you have Hilton, you have Volkswagen, you have Lufthansa, and so forth, in different industry. They're still doing okay, but they are facing a lot of pressures, and some don't make it. There are some bankruptcies like Thomas Cook, or some companies that are facing financial challenges. On top of this, you have the new players, the new digital companies. They have made billions in market value in the last 10, 15 years. Just in the mobility transportation sector, we're talking about around 300 billion of totally new market value. That is done by companies like Uber, Didi, and so forth, companies that have 5,000, maybe 10,000 employees right now. So what's the difference? Why are the new companies taking all this market value and not the giants that have the footprint? Well, the reason is that the new economy works very, very differently. And the primary difference is that the companies below are focusing primarily on physical assets. Whether they own them or not, it's important, but not so much important. But they focus on physical assets. Companies above say, yeah, physical assets, maybe they're important, but we will focus on digital assets. We will focus on data. So let me use the example Airbnb and Hilton. Hilton, famous company, they have 800,000 rooms that they are taking care of and providing to the market. Airbnb doesn't have a single room. They have data points about 3 million rooms worldwide, and they're matching supply and demand. Structurally, they are very, very different companies. Hilton is a single-side market. They have a product, and they're pushing it to the market. Airbnb does not really have a product. They are just a marketplace, matchmaker. But Airbnb is worth 35 billion, so more than Hilton. So this is the change that I'm talking about. Now, the good news is, okay, so now we know this. This is happening for 10 years. So now also, let's say, the bigger companies can play the game. But the thing is, life doesn't stop. So it continues, and this is not the end point. And here's my vision of the end point of this, the current industrial revolution. So let me first start from the left side, where we were. So we had 3-4 decades where IT was essentially supporting the business. So we had CRM systems, ERP systems, stuff like that. And now we are in this phase of disruptions where on top of the business come digital platform. And they're grabbing a lot of market value away from the players. But for users, this is not the best experience, because somehow you live in two different worlds, and you don't live in two different worlds. And you can see this especially in transportation, you can see this. Uber, Didi, all the champions, they are hitting the walls because they say, hey, we are digital platform companies. But then cities say, I'm sorry, but you're making congestion. Or in China, they say, I'm sorry, but you made some problem for us. There were some victims because your drivers attacked some of our passengers and so forth. So unfortunately, you're not just a transportation company, so just a digital company, you're a transportation company. So we are moving, and we will be moving into the next phase, where essentially digital and physical will integrate together in a seamless experience. Now, if you ask me, the best example worldwide where this is happening for me is in China. I traveled to China many times because really they are so much advanced in many, many aspects, in batteries, electric vehicles, in mobile payments, but also, for example, Alibaba Hema, in addition to being e-commerce giant, not many people know this, but they are opening shops. It's called Alibaba Hema. And this is, in my view, the best example of traditional shop where Alibaba brings and put all the digital platform technology. And essentially, you can buy like in traditional shops, taking the products, or you can buy completely online, or a mix, like you go to the shop, have it delivered, you pay with your face, the product catalog is digital, and so forth. Now, the result is astonishing. So they can make like double or even 5 times as big revenue in the same shop like the traditional shops. So that's the important thing. And this is how I see transportation. So we have vehicles, and for quite some time we will use vehicles, but we can make them much, much more efficient in terms of performance. I would like to briefly introduce myself, and I like to do it in a way that I show the 3 hats that I'm wearing. So one is I run the business. We produce software for some of the leaders in transport, like some of the biggest airlines. We're famous for the work we have done for Ryanair and a few others. We work with bus companies. We work with some car makers, like for example, Daimler. The latest, I don't have it on the chart yet, is e-bike. So this is, let's say, this is how we make money today. But I'm thinking, how do we make money in the future? And that is why I established Digital Transportation Lab. So we heard a little bit in the morning, and I want to reiterate. So in order to see what the future will bring, today you need to experiment, you need to fail fast, you need to empower a team so that they can try out different things and see whether they work or not. And one important point, it's really important, these people are young. So if you check the disruptive innovation, you will see mostly it is people in 20s, early 20s, and not without a reason. Within this team, most of the people are in 20s, 20, 25. And there are like 2 of us that are a little bit more with gray hair that are kind of making sure that when they fail, we pick them up and a little bit steer them and so forth. This is really, really important. So we are too much used to the world in which we live in. And if you want to see what the future is, you need to ask people who are not used to it so much. Last but not least, so this was mentioned, so we don't work only within the company, we really want to work also outside. So we joined MaaS Alliance basically from the beginning, and I'm the chair of one of the 3 working groups, so that deals with governance and with the business models. Yeah, so let's talk about the topic. So we live in the century of the car. So this is amazingly successful product. So we are now at 1.4 billion vehicles. And it's a little bit different by country. So in USA, everybody has a car, 800 cars per 1,000 capita. China, more like 200. Europe's somewhere somewhere in between. A lot of things were improved, but there are also some new challenges. So this is a picture from Jakarta. I was speaking there earlier this year, and this is exactly how it looks like in the rush hours, except maybe sometimes you have a bit more these motorcycles. City is completely unlivable. So you cannot walk, you cannot use the bike, because cars go from side to side. And the worst thing is, so in the peak hours, the speed of transport is like 3 kilometers per hour. So think about it. So 100 years ago, we made a revolution. We came from the horse, which was 20 kilometers per hour, and now we have this. This is the progress. But this progress is polluting environment. So in Jakarta, the pollution is equal to 40 to 80 cigarettes per day. So a baby that is born in Jakarta is a chain smoker from day one. So that is the reality. This is not a problem of Jakarta. This is the problem of the whole world. So pollution, congestion, accidents. This year, European Commission calculated how much is this in Europe. In European Union, the cost of these three things, externalities they're called, these three things is 830 billion euros per year. 6% of GDP is these little externalities of the mode of transportation, the choice that we are making today. Surely there is a better way. Let's look at this chart. This is from Australian university, and I think it summarizes the problem in the best way. So you have essentially two parameters. One is the pollution of different modes of transportation. One is the space efficiency of different transportation. A reality is, for most of the trips, we are choosing the worst in both categories. I compare it to airlines, like we are flying first class all the time. When we go home, when we go to the city and so forth. If we would fly once, twice per year, fine, but we fly all the time, we fly first class in terms of resources. And this is a problem. It doesn't scale, and it creates serious issue for the environment. As you know, transportation is 20-25% of the CO2 footprint. So it's a major factor that we need to deal with. And it's the only one, the only sector which has not done the homework yet. Transportation is growing compared to 1990 in Europe. All the others have made the exercise and went down. So how do we go forward? How do we move to a better world? So the slide is, yeah, thanks. So, it's a little bit slow. Yeah, I pressed just once. Let's see if it moves. Good, hopefully it stays. Yeah, so we have new muscles, digital technology. But these new muscles, so it's amazing how powerful it is, you know. So maybe 2 days ago you checked, Alibaba made world record again. In one day they sold 38 billion through their platform. At the peak, they were making 550,000 purchase transactions per second. This is just impossible to do without digital technology. So we have these big muscles. But these muscles work in a special way. So we can process information billion times faster than before. But we cannot change physical aspects. You know, it's really funny. It's counterintuitive. Think about this. Today, artificial intelligence can beat world chess player easily. But we are nowhere near to change the plumber job. Plumber is one of the safest jobs around. It is projected that for the next 30 years, we will not be able to automate it. So think about it. It's counterintuitive sometimes. When it comes to car, what does this mean? This means that this hour, when you're using the car to move A to B, well, you can change certain things, but not so much. But then these other 23 hours, when the car is not used, so this is essentially your mobility guarantee. This is the problem that you can start solving in this way. So anybody that has a own car today, what is your car doing right now? Your car is essentially your mobility guarantee. In the year 2019, where we can use this to solve information problem. And once we start, then you see, hey, maybe many times I don't need to drive alone. Maybe I can drive with somebody else. And either we use things that we already know from the past, like bus and train, or we have new shuttles, like you have seen this Easy Mile, or you use the micro-mobility. So it seems that this is, again, yeah, perfect. This new concept is called mobility as a service. the exact definition proposed by Mobility as a Service Alliance is, we call it a user-centric approach to mobility, where we are integrating different mobility services into one single on-demand accessible service. So let me break it down. It's essentially two aspects. One is, we are saying we will not start with a vehicle, we will start with the user. We put the user in the center. We are thinking, what are the real needs of the user? So that is number one. And the second is, we want to offer everything that is available. I said that I will now switch to this and I will need to use like maybe 5, 10 apps at home. In Barcelona, we had a case study. There are like 40, 50 different mobility services. In Madrid, just for e-scooters, they have 18 now. They limited it to 18 and so forth. Now, that's not my picture of the future, you know, that I have 200 apps because I travel to Toulouse, I travel to Madrid, I travel to London or whatever. So in the end, once this progresses, surely there must be one app, one platform that starts to integrate. Hopefully there's competition, there's alternative, but definitely user experience in the future should not be I need to download 20 apps to move around. In fact, I really believe it will be exactly the opposite. I think we want to have a lot of choices, but on the other hand, we are very happy that others are making choices for us. So the vision of how we will consume this, in my opinion, in 5, 10 years, it's more like we have a concierge app that has full trust of us, understands what we are doing, and understands hundreds of millions of other people. And this device and this platform, this AI, essentially recommends you what you want to do, and like 99.9% it will be exactly what you want. So it will say, hey, this conference is finished, you like to bike, you like train, guess what? You can pick up the train and you can still catch you can pick up the bike and you can still catch the train because the train is late 10 minutes. And you will be delighted because this platform has real-time information which you simply cannot process yourself. So that's the difference. In regards to user-centric, so what we will do is essentially, so we will start looking individually. The digital platform has this ability that they, instead of having one product, one car that 100,000 people buy, more or less the same, you can customize individually for each person. You can know exactly what are the needs, and then you say, okay, these are the services that you want to have. And again, you can offer the flexibility to choose, or you can make recommendations, and this is where the real value comes from. Now, this is the huge opportunity of this change, actually. So, if you look at the modal split today, once I made 5 years ago a decision to have this car, which I have for the next 10 days, then suddenly I decide for maybe 60% of my trips, this is the mode in which I'm going. And maybe in the morning it's raining and I go with a car, and then in the afternoon it's sunshine. I would love to walk or have with a bike, but I need to bring my friend home, It's like he cannot stay at my work, We are making many, many times the wrong choices. I'm comparing this to like shoes, Imagine you could only have one shoes. Which shoes would you buy? You need to go to mountains, you need to go to the seaside, but most of the time you'll be at home, at work, and so forth. You will buy army boots, I'm pretty sure. Because in the mountains, you will say, wait, why do I have these slippers? You will buy army boots, and then you will walk in your living room with these dirty army boots. That's what's happening. 46% of new cars in Paris is SUVs, and they're used for 5-kilometer trips. That is crazy. This is who we are today. So it's time for a very different approach to mobility. The happiest mode of transport, there were studies, is bicycle. So if you take a bicycle, you're the happiest. This is what they say. So you have a lot of choices, but because today this is packaged in one product. Well, we choose the wrong product for 95% of our trip. This is what changes when we go to mobility as a service. And there will be room for a lot of innovation. This is what I want. So things like easy mile and small vehicles for one person, two people, and then on the other side, towards the buses, there will be a lot of, so 95% of trips in city can be aggregated, can be combined. That's a huge opportunity. So there's room for a lot of innovation, but this innovation is a little bit different than before. So many times, so there is a lot of hype about mobility as a service. I have to admit this. And it's compared to Spotify and Netflix and so forth. And I need to be honest, I wrote a blog 5 years ago, mobility as a service is like Spotify. And then 2 years later, I wrote a blog, mobility as a service is not like Spotify. So what is it? I mean, it's both. It is on the high level, it is the same. You're essentially saying, I will use digital platform to consume the services, like music streaming, like Netflix and so forth. But there is also a fundamentally big difference. So the difference is physical complexity is completely different for music as a service, where this can play on any kind of device, or let's say urban mobility or suburban if you want and so forth. There's a lot of interaction points, there's a lot of physical complexity, there's also political, geopolitical complexity and so forth. So if you compare the difference, when Netflix came to my country, to Slovenia, in the same day, they turned on 50 other countries. This will never happen with mobility services, I believe. So if you look at Uber tried to open city by city other countries. They lost in China, they lost in Russia, they lost in Middle East, they lost in Southeast Asia. They're now fighting for survival in Mexico and so forth. So it will just not be the same. It's not as simple like Netflix and Spotify, and it will take longer. But having said this, even knowing this, I'm super optimistic, but it will take 5, 10, 15 years. So another important thing, so as a chair of Mobility as a Service Alliance of the work group, I have a privilege to talk to many communities like this all around the world, from China, Singapore, Taiwan, US and so forth. And what I've noticed is that many times you have these players, big players, petrol, so energy, insurance, car makers and so forth, and they all say, we will be the next Booking.com, the next Spotify, and so forth of mobility. And I'm trying to humbly explain them there is not a place for just one company. So it is just so complex thing. It will need to be collaboration. It will need to be many stakeholders. And it will need to be not just private companies. It will need to be also public. It will need to be cities. It will need to be regional governments involved in this. This is my view of, let's say, at least like 6 layers. And here I think you know very well the story of airline market. So you have the Airbus, Boeing, you have the airlines, and you have OTAs on top. I think in mobility it will be more than this. There will be more layers. So I think instead of thinking, hey, my company can solve it all, I would suggest collaboration. And this is exactly what MaaS Alliance is all about. It's like, let's bring all the stakeholders together. Let's have a dialogue. Let's try to find the best solution so that we accelerate the progress. The piece of the pie is huge. So so on the previous slide, just the layer, which is called MaaS, is estimated to be 500 billion in 2030. Today, it is a single digit billion number, and it will grow 60% per year to 2030. That's every year. That is expected. So the piece of the pie is big, but it will not be for one player, I'm pretty sure. So what happens when we move into this world is essentially transportation becomes really a data business. And you will see that then you will be looking at the giants like Alibaba, like Google, like Facebook, how they're dealing with this data. And you will see that primarily you start from the user, this single view of customer, 360 degree, which is I have to say, very unusual for car makers who are used that everything is around the car. But in fact, in this world, everything is around the user. You know what your user had for breakfast, for dinner, and for lunch. You know everything. And this is exactly what they're doing. And then you can predict many, many things. And then you can open ecosystem. So this is the story of what we have done for Ryanair. Essentially, Ryanair makes most of the profit from selling you other things, not the plane ticket. So they are selling you hotel, restaurant, and so forth. And this is exactly what I believe will happen also on the ground. So if you ask me what is the future energy source for mobility, is it hydrogen, is it electric, I say it's data, actually. So future mobility will be powered with data. So just as a teaser, Google Waymo is the most advanced autonomous mobility developer. Do you think that they will go with the classical bus kind of, hey, you buy a ticket and you're riding? Or do you think they will use the business model that they pioneered 15, 20 years ago, where the core service is for free and they are taking the value from the ecosystem? I'm 100% sure there will be the economy kind of ride in the city with Google's or some other shuttles that will be for free. It will be financed by what are you doing at the destination. Do you go for dinner? Do you go for lunch? And whoever gets the money for the lunch will be paying for the ride. So this is my vision of future mobility. So as a summary, digital technology is here and it's here to stay. It will not go away. Once you find some new power, you cannot ignore it. But this power is a different power than we're used to. So in order to deal with it, in order to get the most benefit out of this, we will need to now decouple things where digital technology cannot really help us, and this is these physical assets, and we will need to find areas in which digital technology can help us a great deal. And once we do this, then we need to integrate it into a seamless user journey. And if we are able to do this, and I'm very, very optimistic based on what I've heard this, I think we'll have a lot new unicorns and a much better planet for us and for our kids. Thank you very much.